Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for the week starting Sunday, May 4th. Brought to you by Vunubaka.com, a new residential and surf community in the island of Fiji. Today, there's very little going on in the North Pacific. A small low-pressure system north of Hawaii, a little bit of fetch moving into the Pacific Northwest, generating 12-foot seas, and that's about it. We'll take a look, just roll this through for the next couple of days, see what's going on. Virtually nothing of any interest is going to occur for the whole week. A little bit of maybe some low trying to get going, cut off low northwest of Hawaii, but we expect really nothing from that in terms of anything other than maybe wind swell. Another little tiny pocket of low pressure pushing into the Pacific Northwest, but seas again not just barely 18 feet. Good for a solid wind swell for the northwest, but that's about it. We'll roll this out, and then it even gets quieter beyond there. Again, little bits here and there, but nothing of any real interest. So we will now go focus on the South Pacific. In the South Pacific, there's a still part of a complex gale, actually a storm that the first part of it's already pushing into Chile. Next part of it trying to organize, going to push into extreme southern Chile. But again, this is well east of the Southern California swell window. Good for the Chile area up into Peru, but not anything for the continental U.S. So let's go take a look at, now this is current conditions, not a whole lot going on immediately, but there is some hope for the future. Let's go take a look at the jet stream level models. At the jet stream level, these are winds up above 30,000 feet. The jet stream tends to direct the travel path of storms that form, in this case in the South Pacific, and also help to promote the formation of storms when you get a trough. And now, since we're in the southern hemisphere, these troughs would be pushing north and sort of form a bow in the jet stream going this direction. Clearly, there's nothing currently happening in the southwest Pacific. In the southeast, there's kind of a little bit of a gradual trough here, but winds are very light. They're in the 110 knot winds, 110 knot range. But still, that was enough to get a little bit of circulation going down at the surface here southwest of Chile. Let's put this into motion and see what's going to happen over the next week. So we roll this out. You notice that there you go. You get a bit of a trough trying to get going by Monday evening. Decent winds pushing up into it, 140, 150 knots further, but it doesn't get a whole lot of traction. It's kind of a short-lived trough, but still, it pushes well to the north. This is good to support at least gale formation in that region. This is off like Tuesday afternoon or so, and pushes towards Chile, but starts falling apart. Then we continue to look. Here's another trough. It's a trough further south. We're into Friday now, but again, 140 knot winds pushing to the north. A little bit of circulation could get going here. We'll put this into motion. And it continues out into Saturday. Notice also, so the circulation in the southern hemisphere is clockwise for low pressure systems, in the northern hemisphere counterclockwise. So as our focus shifts to the south, we'll just sort of try to indicate some differences between the two. So this trough that develops south of New Zealand by late in the work week actually holds together into Sunday. Winds die off, but it's a step in the right direction. We haven't had anything under New Zealand so far this year, and this is the first system that might sort of fit that bill. So looking pretty good, and that rolls out and continues into almost Monday of next week. And again, the jet remains kind of a little bit further to the north, hinting that maybe another trough will form beyond that into next week. That would be good news. Next, we'll take a look at surface pressure and surface winds. Of course, winds are what generate swell, or actually seas, and those seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, or the winds that created them, turn into swell, and that's what we like to ride. As of right now, 18Z run Sunday. Here's that complex gale system that we were talking about south of Chile. One little fetch down here, 45 knot winds. A second fetch, 45, almost 50 knots. Very far to the south, really focused on southern Chile up into maybe the Punta Lobos area. And probably good enough for swell up into Peru, but not for the U.S. It's all cut off east of the Great Circle Pass, traveling there. Another little system here in the deep South Pacific, 45 to 50 knot winds, but very small, and low pressure trying to get organized in the Tasman Sea here, and then southwest of Tasmania. This is a much better looking pattern than what we've been seeing. Let's put this into motion, see how it plays out. So the new system here, we're into Monday evening. This is forming in a trough that's developing there. 45 knot winds, aimed pretty well to the north. And it gets going. Let's try the Great Circle Pass into Southern California. You see it's on the 187 pass, so it's pretty far to the east, but good enough probably, if it forms, for some degree of swell. Relative to Northern California, about the 184 degree path, and clearly relative to Hawaii, nothing aimed at the Hawaiian Islands, too far to the east. We'll put this into motion. So that system sort of peters out, tries to regroup again on Wednesday, but again, the focus would be Chile by this point in time. Another system, much stronger, 55 knot winds, pretty much aimed west to east. Let's see how this plays out. 55, 60 knot winds, deep South Pacific. Again, a little bit more sideband swell probably from this for continental U.S. Best target, Peru, Chile. Small system, though, generally speaking, but that's 2, and we're only into 100 hours into the forecast so far. And then we come along, a broad fetch starts developing southeast of New Zealand into Friday. And you get some 40, 45 knot winds. It was actually forecast to be stronger about 24 hours ago, but still, this is a rather broad system here, filling most of the South Pacific. Not really strong, though, but good for perhaps some swell. And then that sort of peters out. Now we're out to 174 hours, and here's yet another system forecast under New Zealand. So it appears that the New Zealand corridor is opening up. That is the preferred angle. Get more of southwest angle up here into California. But if you're into watching Chile and Peru, then this window here would tend to be a little bit better. The more south, closer proximity storm, larger size. Now let's check out significant wave heights. These are the waves generated by the winds we were just talking about. So we roll this out again, this system off of Chile, not so interesting for us at the moment. Another little system, but it's quickly out of the picture. Something forecast here in the Tasman Sea relative, this could produce swell relative to Fiji. Rather small and short-lived system, but pushing north. Oh, and then of course, we get back, we'll start here. We're into Monday night. A new stronger system forming, that's about 26-foot seas, and then we're into 32-foot seas and a little bit more, but doesn't get much more than that. We're into Tuesday for Southern California again, like 186 degree path. But that's small. It's small, rather short-lived, but it actually pushes north pretty well. That'll be good for some, modest-sized surf into exposed Southern California breaks, and likely up into Northern California as well, breaks that are south-facing. We'll roll this out a little bit more, and then a stronger system behind that Wednesday. This is, look at that, we're into 48-foot seas, small, but again, sort of taking the same northeasterly track, and even a little bit more north than that. Let's, at its peak, let's see, relative to Southern California, you're into about the 200, maybe 198 degree path, but here's Tahiti and some of the islands here, probably a little bit shadowed, but the nice part about this is as it'll move out of the shadow and pushing north, and then you're into clear, unobstructed, no shadowing from the islands, and still 38 plus foot seas forecast into Thursday. It's still a way out for the model, so it's hard to say whether this will really develop, but it certainly looks promising there. And then yet we're into Saturday and yet another system. This is 30-foot seas a bit east of New Zealand. relative to Southern California, about the 211 degree path, and follow this path right up, and there's Tahiti and surrounding islands right completely shadowed there. So that will definitely cut down consistency of whatever sets her eyes, and probably take a little hack out of the size as well. But it continues on and tries to regroup into, we're into 180 hours out. Still, swell is swell. You take it however you can get it. And yet another system organizing. Notice that the wind models had a lot higher winds. It takes about anywhere from 8 to 12 hours for the winds to actually start getting a really good grip on the ocean surface. So if this model went out another 2 steps, you'd probably see a lot higher seas in this region based on what we saw from the wind models. But a week out, who knows? It's hard for any of it to be believable. The good news on all this is there is activity in the southern hemi. It does appear to be sort of waking up, so whatever we're going to be lacking from the north will be made up for in swell energy coming from the south. So that's a step in the right direction for our season. So next we'll take a look long-term out. This is the usual drill here. We start looking at MJO, ENSO, signs of El Nino. As we've been discussing, there's considerable media energy around a potential El Nino developing, so let's try to strip out some of the hype and find out what's really going on. Right now, the Southern Oscillation Index, this is the difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti, minus 7.95. This is the daily average, suggesting lower than normal pressure over Tahiti, higher than normal pressure over Darwin. Symptomatic of El Nino if negative numbers go for extended lengths of time, which clearly are not. We've been through a pretty good run of high numbers here. 30-day average as a result, which was down at about minus 10, is now up at 6.46, so it's going to take quite a bit of effort from the Southern Oscillation Index to get these numbers back to negative. But the 90-day running average is definitely down, minus 2.89, and slowly but steadily falling. So there's some indications that we're certainly in ENSO neutral, certainly not El Nino, but nowhere near anything that would resemble La Nina. So let's examine what's going on relative to the Madden-Julian oscillation, the MJO. Westerly winds or westerly anomalies is what we'd want to see in the West Pacific. We see actually the beginnings of weak easterlies over the maritime continent. This is probably the start of the new inactive phase of the MJO. We see westerly anomalies over the dateline. That is the exiting active phase of the MJO. And of course, none of this is unexpected. The models have been calling for this for a while. Relative to Kelvin wave formation and the movement of or pushing of warm water down on the ocean surface in this area, some of that's still occurring here. Actually, this is a better region for it to occur right around the dateline, but you can get Kelvin waves developing from westerly anomalies anywhere from about here, just east of the Philippines, onward to the east. Continuing on our tour here, we get over the dateline south of Hawaii. Weak westerly anomalies continue, and then going pretty much neutral south of Mexico. Next we go a week out, see what the forecast is. Here's the troubling part of all this. We see easterly anomalies forecast to develop, pretty much going from the dateline the whole way to the Philippines. That would cut off any warm water migration at depth and shut off the warm spigot to the Kelvin wave machine. Whether this actually occurs or not, the models forecast it. It's been on for a long time. We'll see what actually happens. The hope is it doesn't develop, or if it does, it's a very short-lived burst, and then we get back into some sort of westerly anomaly flow. We'll see. Anyway, easterlies projected in the far west Pacific, turning neutral on the dateline. And then once you get south of Hawaii, it's pretty much neutral. And the last little bit of the old active phase starting to push into Central America, and that is by the 12th of May. Here's another view of that same thing. This is from 5 south to 5 north and extending, so this would be about the Philippines here. This would be Well, actually, the Galapagos Islands would be about here. So here's the last westerly wind burst, weaker but still a westerly wind burst for the whole, pretty much the whole month of April. Now we get into May. Here's the developing. I'll call it an easterly wind burst, but that is really no such of a thing. It's basically just enhanced trades. We'll see what happens. Here's another view of the situation, more just standard graphical view, and this goes out about 2 weeks. The reds and the oranges this is outgoing long wave radiation, but still can be used to view the inactive and active phases of the MJO. Reds and oranges are enhanced reflectivity off the ocean surface, typically associated with high pressure, typically associated with easterly anomalies. The blues are less reflectivity off the ocean surface, meaning more moisture in the atmosphere or precipitation, and typically the active phase of the MJO. So here's where we are right now. Last remnants of the active phase over the dateline, working their way east. Incoming inactive phase, 5 days out. The situation continues. This version of the model, the statistic model, suggests this inactive phase is, if anything, is going to be pretty weak, short-lived, and while the active phase builds over in the Indian Ocean and starts working its way towards the dateline. The dynamic model is actually starting to pick on on some of this too, suggesting the inactive phase is to peak about 5 days out, and that's about what consistent with what we saw in the other model with easterly anomalies right in this region. If it only does that for about 5 to 10 days, we're probably not in too bad a shape. Assuming the active phase comes in behind and actually gets some sort of westerly winds blowing again. But there's also another way out of this scenario, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then this is the longer day, 40-day, a longer-term 40-day model at the jet stream level, 200 millibar level. Again, same sort of deal. The yellows and oranges, this isn't reflectivity. This is just enhanced or decreased probability for precipitation, but still signifies the inactive phase of the MJO. As you see, it's modeled to continue build, work its way east into about the 24th of May and peter out, while the active phase starts building in the Indian Ocean, making its way to the West Pacific by about the 24th of May, and then does its trip the whole way across the Pacific into about the 13th of June, when yet another inactive phase develops. Now, the interesting part about this is typically if you've got some sort of a El Nino going, what happens is the MJO can pretty much die out or just go to sort of a permanent active phase. We're not seeing any of that in the models at this point in time. So that sort of makes us think the extended westerly wind bursts that we had in January, February, March, into April, basically 4 months of westerly anomalies, whatever caused that appears to be fading out at the moment, but still there is a way out of this, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Next up, sea surface temperature anomalies. This is the interesting chart. This style of the chart only updates about every 5 days or so, but clearly the good news is warmer than normal water, any of the yellows and oranges, warmer than normal water, whole way across the equatorial Pacific. And what's most interesting is this pocket right here between the Galapagos and off of Ecuador. This popped up just over the last, this one, 5-1. Before it wasn't nearly as strong. This suggests that there's a massive Kelvin wave that's been working its way under the equator for a month or two, no, several months actually. It appears to be starting to breach the surface here. Water temperatures are up. We're very interested to see the next update to this chart and see if it in fact gets warmer still. And here's the deal. As waters warm in this region, the suspicion is that there'll be more moisture working its way up into the atmosphere. It'll kill the trades in this region. When the trades start dying here, they're going to start dying the whole way across the equator, especially as more warm water starts building here. It sort of creates a feedback loop. Trades start dying, and then that actually starts the Kelvin wave, westerly anomalies going again. More warm water at depth pushing east, feeding this building pocket, and there still would be easterly winds here, but just not as strong as normal, and that would force this warm pull here to start working its way along the equator and warming this entire region. So that when I say there's a way out of the current inactive phase and easterly anomalies, this would be it. There's massive amounts of warm water, and we'll get into that in a minute here. It's all going to start gurgling up at the surface, and once that starts happening, it's pretty hard to, as long as it's warm enough, it's pretty hard to shut down the cycle the feedback loop that could start developing. So this is a key to watch, is how quickly does this area warm, how large does the area of warm water get, and does it linger? And the suspicion is all that will probably happen, but no guarantees. It's nature. Don't believe the models, believe what really happens. Here's yet one more view of the surface. Again, plus 0.5 degree or warmer water across the entire equatorial Pacific. Westerly anomalies still in play. Notice though that here, these are actual winds. They're easterly winds now, pretty much dying to neutral, but that's still just enough to give it any relaxation in the normal state will help you set up a Kelvin wave, or at least keep the warm water pump going. So that's still going on as of right now. So this is good news. And yet one more view here, pocket of almost 2 degrees above normal water on the equator, pocket of 1.45, and there's not a label on this, but this is still very suspicious in this region as well. So well worth monitoring over the next week or so. And of course the subsurface view, dateline here, working your way towards the Philippines here, Galapagos Islands just off the edge of the picture here. These are actual water temperatures. Notice normally you have a big pool of warm water here, and then the thermocline depth gets very shallow here for warm water, but now there's almost a semi-uniform, there's still a big pocket here, a lot more warm water that could push east, but notice that there's a lot more depth here than there was a couple of months ago. And of course that is because here's the anomaly chart. Warm water has been pushing east. Here's the Kelvin wave. It's shown as sort of broken up here, but we'll show you another image in a minute. Still 6 degrees above normal water temperatures. This is all confirmed. There's the X's here are sensors. We've talked about this in the past. Confirmed warm water on the verge, if not starting to breach the surface off of Ecuador and the Galapagos. So this is good news. What we really want to start seeing is more warm water building here, so it can start feeding and continuing to keep this pocket going here. And what we need, of course, would be westerly anomalies at the surface, or westerly winds at the surface, to start the downwelling and the warm water pump again. Right now it is not turned off though. It's still there. It's just flowing at a slow trickle. And here's the other view we talked about. Supposedly 6 degrees above normal water here. Hard to believe, but for sure it's confirmed here on the sensors. This far out though, there aren't any sensors. We can go up here and see there's a big hole. There's a gap in between where it is about. Well, there's the 155 array, and then you're into 110 array, and you can kind of superimpose that in your mind. Here's the 110 array, here's the 155 would be about in here. So that's a modeled projection, but it's probably not too far off the truth. At least 5 degree water temps. And notice it's still showing the downwelling, the spout, if you will. So the path is down, warm water, and then it all starts racing east and up and gurgling up at the surface. So that's what we're watching for, and it appears to have started. And finally, the Nino 3.4 forecast as of today. The current forecast looks like about by late October, early November, 1.6 degree average water temperatures above normal. And this is away from Ecuador and the Galapagos. This is out more towards south of Hawaii in that region. So, and this definitely would be considered El Nino. Actually, a long run of anything over about a half a degree is considered El Nino. Some sites say it's 0.08, but either way, it looks like we're probably there since we're into early May, according to this. So, if this goes even halfway close. It doesn't have to get to the big spike, because typically what happens after a really big spike, you also crash into La Nina the following year, and we'd prefer that not to happen. If this is more of a moderate, long-running, multi-year sort of event, that would be best. But it sort of looks like it's going to be more, if it's going to happen, it's going to be in the east. It's going to be a short, high spike, and then the crash after that. So that means more suffering in the years to follow, but this coming year, this fall season, fall into winter, could be pretty interesting surf-wise for the U.S. West Coast and Hawaii. So that's kind of it for the moment. We again want to thank our sponsor, vunabaka.com, for bringing this forecast to you. And thanks for watching. This has been the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for Sunday, May 4th. And the week that follows, things are looking kind of interesting, a little bit promising. So we'll do this again next week, same time, same place. Thanks again.